Oh, Karen's Pinot Grigio. Karen, you were popular on the call today. Karen is also holding one of her Pinot Grigio bottles. All right. Okay, I think, oh, greetings from the wilds of Eastern Oregon. You got some people from, yeah, Pennsylvania, California, and Oregon so far. They're pumped. Should we get started? What do you think? Kick it off? All right, guys, welcome. This is an official Naked event featuring the fabulous women in wine that you, the Angels, fund, thanks to all of your support. We are gathered here today with some incredible industry leaders, and I am thrilled to introduce them all. My name's Christy. I have one of the fun jobs of tasting through all the wine and telling winemaker stories here at Naked HQ in Napa Valley, California. Although you can see my apartment has been my office since last March, as is the case for most people here. We are being moderated today by Sally Mohr. So Sally is the second American woman to become a Master Somm in the US, herself a leader in this industry, and she is met by 6 women that you should know and have their wines handy for. I'm going to introduce them all individually. In my corner view, we have Francoise Gazeau from France, who makes delicious Cremant. I think is better than champagne, but don't tell anyone else on the call or in the world. It's being recorded, whatever, that's fine. I have Nicky Parish from New Zealand. She's also part of the Parish family. If you know Matt Parish, she is a sibling, maybe the better sibling. We do not know. I think so. Sorry, Matt. We have Penelope Gad Koster, aka Penny, who makes dazzling sparkling from us. She currently resides, I believe, in Healdsburg, in that area. She's nodding yes, that's a fact. I have Anna Diogo-Draper from Makes Wines in Sonoma, California, also runs Artesa Winery as well. We have Karen Birmingham in Lodi, looks like in the cellar right now, probably making some more Birmingham wines for you. She's our current leading winemaker of the year as well on the call. And we also have Irene Paiva from Chile, one of the pioneering winemakers in the region. Has several beautiful estate wines she makes for us. And they're all going to be talking to you today about their lives as women in wine. So get started, go ahead. And I hope you have a glass somewhere of wine around you're drinking. I don't have one, but I'm going to find one soon.
Great, it's so exciting to be here with all these ladies and so excited to be talking about International Women's Month. And what better way than to be drinking wine made from women? So I'm going to do this kind of democratically. I'm going to start alphabetically. So Karen, you get to go first. You make so many wines. I'm just wondering if you have a favorite, or if you love making a lot of diverse wines, or what's
yeah,
the big story?
Well, I do make a lot of different wines here in the Lodi area. Our appellation, we're so fortunate with our weather and our climate and our soils that so many different grape varieties, they just do so well here in this area. So we're known for Zinfandel, but so many other grapes just grow so well. So many whites, the Sauvignon Blanc, which we tried, and we have so many potential to do so much more. So personally, I love making all different wines. I don't have a particular favorite. It changes all the time. Right now, my favorite is Pinot Grigio, which I have here right now on this Friday afternoon. I think it changes a lot with the seasons. So this is a wine I made, this last harvest. It's a 2020 Pinot Grigio. And I just love bottling the new vintage whites in January, because to me, it's a sign of the new season starting, right? We just had bud break here in Lodi. We're starting a whole new season, and spring's starting. We have a gorgeous day outside today. And so right now, this time of year, I love Pinot Grigio. I love the Sangiovese Rosé as well. And so it does change. And I think that's what's so fun about making wine too, is there are so many different types of wines, so many different varieties you can make. Blends are fun, just to see how different wines kind of work together to make fun new red blends. And I'm actually going to be bottling a 2020 red blend here soon. And so that was kind of fun putting that together. So yeah, lots of different wines I make, and I love making them all.
So you, in your interview, you had a aha moment of just, you were originally in microbiology. So tell us how you ended up going from that field into winemaking.
Well, growing up for me, I didn't grow up in a wine family. My parents, they're both from Europe, so wine was on the table with meals, but it was never a career that I had thought about as a child. And it's not really something you learn about in school, right? Becoming a winemaker, unless you're, I think, grow up in the industry. So my aha moment was in college. So I was studying microbiology. I love science, but I also loved cultures and so many other things. And I started working for a professor that was researching wine fermentations. And it was just absolutely fascinating to me, because really to be able to use my science, and wine, it's such a natural product, right? We're growing these grapes, it's of the earth, and every year it's a cycle. And then to use my science to make such a natural product, that's something that just all over the world has been going on, for centuries. It just really was exciting. And so I learned as much as I could about wine and winemaking at that time. And yeah, that's how I really learned about wine and winemaking, and I just never wanted to stop. So I've been pretty much making wine ever since.
Oh, and is there anything that you're looking forward to that you want to explore in the future, or something we should know about that's going on that you're working with?
That's a good question. I'm always looking for new, unique varietals. I love the traditional varieties. I think, there's a reason why there's so much Cabernet Sauvignon planted all over the world, beautiful wines, Chardonnay. I love all the traditional wines. But just over the last 5-10 years, just what we've been able to do here in Lodi, just exploring some of the Italian varietals, and they grow so well here. It's been just fun learning about the varieties, learning about the history from the other places, and then planting them here and seeing what the wines are like, and then making these wines for the angels, right, for the future. So it's very much looking forward to just trying new things.
Great. All right, let's move on. Anna, so you play around a lot with Portuguese varieties. You've got family in Portugal. So you are making wine for the angels coming from Portugal. That kind of pulls in from what Karen was just talking about varieties that maybe aren't native to an area. And Portugal has so many fabulous grapes that no one has really heard of. What do you see in the future, maybe in California, for a lot more of these varieties? Or is there something else that you're really excited about?
Well, that was my initial pitch to Naked Wines, was really wanted to showcase how these varietals did in Californian soil, particularly Tempranillo, or we call it Tinta Roriz in Portugal. There's different names. Like you said, there's a lot of varietals, and they're always all delicious and very hard to pronounce. And making Touriga too. And that's probably, I'd say, the Touriga Tempranillo blend was the first wine that really kind of took on this path of Iberian varietals, showcased in California, and then the Tempranillo from Paso. And then a few years ago, in a trip to Portugal, I really reconnected with all the wine industry and with friends there. And I spent a month there and kind of did a tour of Portugal, as I like to call it. I went up to the Douro. My family's from the Alentejo, from the southern region of Portugal, where all the cork trees grow. And on the plane ride back, I just had this epiphany that I just had to start making wines in Portugal again, and came back and at a meeting and said, I want to make this happen. I know this could be incredible. And gladly they said yes. And so I did a rosé first. And then this year I'm making 2 different red blends out of the southern end of Portugal. And I think Portugal is a very undiscovered region. I've always tell people to be brave. These are, like I said, hard to pronounce varietals, but they're incredible deals. I mean, these wines, you can find really, really amazing Portuguese wines for $10–15 a bottle. And I really wanted to showcase, I always say when I make these Portuguese varietals in California, I'm never trying to mimic what's done in, you know, a Rioja Tempranillo or a Douro Tempranillo. I want to showcase how these varietals do in these different terroirs in California. And I think they do incredibly well. I work also for my full-time job, a Spanish winery. And so I do Albarino, I work with Tempranillo from Napa, from Sonoma, Amador. I don't like to say, but I must be one of the people in California who works with more different AVAs of growing Tempranillo, and they all look so different. And it's, I think as a winemaker, we can all relate. It's really, really fun to see how the same grape varietal and sometimes the same clone of the grape does so differently in these different terroirs. And I think there's a lot of future for Iberian varietals in California and other parts. I know we have some Oregon Tempranillo too on the website that I've had a chance to try, and it's so different because it's then from a cooler climate. So there's a different interpretation even more. So I think there's a great future.
But do you think climate change is going to maybe push some of these varietals that we're seeing especially from Europe in these cooler climates, moving into some of the West Coast of the United States?
I think so. And even regions now that are not, you know, cooler regions in California where, you know, 10 years ago, everyone would be laughable, like, oh, I'm making wine there. And now they're being discovered and, you know, and being starting to look at. And like, I'm in Carneros right now. Even in Carneros, we see that change of climate. And, you know, we grow a lot of grapes, Espinino for sparkling. And, you know, we really have to adjust. And the adjustment happens with everything. We've, as you know, obviously we've been through 2nd year of drought consecutive in California, and so adjusting, you know, growing according to that, and trying to dry farm things a little more and adjust for these changes in climate change. Absolutely, I think. It's on one end the regions being found, but on the other end the varietals, the rootstocks, and as I always say, experimentation is to be one of the things in the backbone of a winemaker always. And I've been doing a little bit of that, and I'm sure all my colleagues here have too.
So your future, you just see yourself continuing on with these same grapes, or is there something else you'd like to?
I touch, I feel like I touch with by both jobs, every varietal under the sun. And I love that, you know, when you were asking Karen, is there a favorite? It's like asking which one's your favorite kid, you know, maybe you have one, but you don't want to say it. It's a little bit like that sometimes. I don't know, I'm in the mode of my 2 projects right now. I also make a lot of different Cabernets from Sonoma County and even from Mendocino County. And you know, Cabernet, such a cliche, but it's such a fun grape to work with too. And I absolutely, like Karen said, I love it too. I'm not sure. I think I have these little epiphanies, and maybe a year from now, something else would come. I actually had one this week, but I need to sleep on it a little more before dwell into it. Wines from Mexico. I've been very intrigued by it. I'm starting to think more and more about that. I just love that idea. So I'm starting to plan post-COVID a trip down to Mexico to study a little more about the wine scene there. I know there's a lot happening right now, so I'm very curious about that too.
Can we
Baja
invitation ready for us?
I'm sorry, Christy?
Have invitations ready for us? Can we all come?
Yes, let's do it. Girls trip. I love it. From Baja, but there's a couple. There's I think a region above North Ojos Negros or something like that I've been curious about it too. So I just want to learn a little more about it. I'm very curious about it.
Okay. what was your aha moment in wine? What got you started?
Well, I knew I wanted to be in agriculture. My goal was to wear jeans and boots to work every day. So I knew that. And so I took agronomy and agriculture engineering in school. And then wine has always been part of, just like Karen, our, in our table and with family. We have friends with vineyards that we used to all harvest, not directly us, but I took a winemaking class, and that was really my aha moment. I had an incredible professor, is still one of the top winemakers in Portugal. So he wasn't academic at all. He was very production driven, and he really passed on that passion. I think half of that class, we all went into the wine industry and pursued then winemaking as a career. So then I, pursued studies in winemaking, my thesis in winemaking. And then I did my first harvest, and I was hooked forever. That rhythm, that partnership, that kind of, we all know we're talking about it. Once you either love it or you hate it. I always tell everyone wants to be a winemaker, work or harvest. You love it, you hate it. If you're meant to do that for 30, 40 years of your life, or if this is a one-off and you never want to see, a rackus or a dirty floor again. But for me, it was just love. I just loved that. I loved everything about it. So I had those two aha moments in school and in the cellar.
Wonderful. All right, Penny. So speaking of being in the business for a very long time, you have been around basically Sonoma area for quite a while. So you've got a huge history going on in winemaking there. So you've met a lot of people, a lot of that history. But to be in sparkling wine back in those days had to have been pretty amazing. Nobody else was.
And very true. And, I started out actually in a still winery that decided to start sparkling. So I started out at Jordan Vineyards and Winery. And the year that I started there in 1987, Tom Jordan decided to start J. And so it was just, I still call it the J Project, even though it's been 35 years. But started it out, we got the first Cocard press in the US there at that time. And yeah, there weren't a lot of people that actually knew the process. And I have to say, it actually kind of took me a little while to kind of figure that out as well. And, now I don't think about it, and I forget that, there's kind of extra processes to sparkling wine that a lot of us as winemakers don't know about. So that's kind of really fun for me then, working with other people on sparkling wines and kind of getting that education out to not only fellow winemakers, but also just to the public to understand how much work really goes into these wines.
Can you go into a bit of the process so we can enlighten some of the angels?
Sure. So really the first part of the process isn't a whole lot different from making a white wine. The grapes actually go in direct to a press, are pressed, and then there's different fractions. And those fractions are a little bit different for sparkling wine than they are for still wine, because you want some really light wines that aren't influenced by the skin contact. So that's kind of the process then of the pressing, and you get your juice and you ferment it pretty much the same way that you would a still white wine. Goes through that same process. Once it's finished fermenting, then the blending starts. Again, if you were sourcing from a lot of different Chardonnay vineyards for a Chardonnay lot of wine, it wouldn't be a lot different at that point either, except you're dealing with wines that taste like grapefruit juice. So the first time that you go in and you sit down with all of these wines that have acidity levels that are like grapefruit juice, it's a little alarming at first. Now I actually prefer that over a lot of still wines because I'm so used to that acidity and what that acidity can do when you have it with foods. From there, once the blending is done and cold stabilizing and all of the things that you would do again with a still wine, then we get the wine ready to go into the bottle with yeast. We add sugar, we add a little bit of nutrient, and then from there, it actually goes into a bottle. And a lot of people think that's the bottling process, but it really isn't. It's kind of like filling up a gazillion little teeny barrels. So it's still wine. And in that bottle then is where it starts to ferment with that sugar and that yeast. And that's how we get all of those little teeny bubbles. Then the longer that it actually sits on that yeast, then the finer and more delicate then those bubbles become. So that's where that length of time laying down. So you'll see these wines, there'll be 2 years or 4 years or 6 years. And, you know, I'd love if all of these were about 6 years, but they're not all meant to be that way. And we want to share them a little bit sooner than that. Once they've finished that process and you've determined that they're ready then to be disgorged, which is technically then bottling, we decide what kind of riddling process needs to happen, evaluate them, come up with programs then to riddle them. That riddling process can take anywhere from 3 days to 8 days, 10 days. It really depends on the wine. It depends on the length of time that the wine has been on the yeast as well. Then once it is riddled, which is basically a bottle going from here to this way, whoops, can you see it? There you go. What happens then is all of that sediment is down into the neck of the bottle, and then from there can be disgorged. The disgorging process, the bottles are upside down as I was showing, go into a freezing bath of glycol and water, freezes that neck, then they can be put upright. The cap comes off of them at that point, everything flies out because there's about 80 PSI of pressure in each of these little bottles, or 6 bar of pressure. Then from there, if there's dosage that's to go in, sweetening or some kind of balance that you want, it's done at that point. And then it gets corked. It gets a nice little wire hood, which you don't see much on still wines. It gets a capsule. And then gets a nice little bath. Actually, it gets the bath before the capsule. Gets a nice little bath, gets a label, and goes into a case. And then it really has to rest for at least a couple of weeks to a month. If you naturally even let it go a little bit longer. What happens then is all of that you've done to it actually has some time to kind of, I say, get its life together, because it's kind of been beat up and tossed around. And so it takes a little bit of time for all of that to kind of come together. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So I was asking you earlier when your next release is going to be coming out to the Angels. So I'm sure they would like to hear so they can get their name on the wish list for your next release. And when do you think it'll be coming?
Yeah, so I know we've got a couple of different times that we're going to be releasing some of these wines according to when they're ready to go. I believe, though, the first ones are coming out in about, I'm going to say 2 to 4 weeks. And then we should see a few more kind of a couple of months after that. So we're trying to kind of rotate through. There's going to be some new wines as well. So I've got a Reserve Brut coming out. So everybody keep your eyes open. That's going to be really special. I'm really excited about getting another Reserve wine on the list. And then there's one other wine. I'm trying to remember. There's another one, I think, in the Gen series. That's another Brut that will be coming out as well that I didn't have before. So really excited. The lineup is increasing as well, because all of you angels out there have decided that you love bubbles, and I love making them for all of you. So pretty exciting to actually see the growth of this. happening as well.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much. And so that's a great segue now into Francoise. If you can tell us about your sparkling wine that you make. And we just want to mention that Francoise, it's past midnight there, your time. And but Limoux is such a fabulous region for sparkling wine. And I'm so excited to hear about what you're going to be sending next to all the angels, or what's going to be available. So if you want to talk about your project.
Yeah, so I'm Francoise Gazeau. I'm coming from the south of France. I'm the 6th generation of the Antèche family. Now I'm Francoise Gazeau, and we are specialized in sparkling wine. So we produce Crémant de Limoux, and I'm very proud because I come from this tiny little city of Limoux, where the bubble was invented 5 centuries ago. In fact, we have a beautiful Benedictine abbey where there were a long time ago monks praying, somewhere organizing the life in the monastery. And one of the monks was in charge of the cellar. The story doesn't say if this monk was stupid or drunk one day, but by mistake, he put wine into a bottle that had not finished the fermentation. And of course, the wine went on fermenting in the bottle. Some weeks later, when the monks decided to open the wine, they realized it was sparkling. There were bubbles in it. And they had a very good idea to write it on the register of the abbey. So the first trace of a sparkling wine, written trace of a sparkling wine in the world was in 1544 in Limoux, 150 years before the Champagne. So wow, we are so lucky to have this long tradition of doing sparkling wine. Of course, it was not a method traditionnelle, as Penelope explained so well. It was probably what we call today method ancestrale. But in Limoux today, we have moved also to method traditionnelle. What makes Limoux very unique for sparkling is that we are clearly Mediterranean. We are at the frontier with Spain, so really south and hot. But at the same time, my vineyard is 400 meters height, just facing the beautiful Pyrenees mountain. So that gives my wine a lot of freshness. And this mix between the Mediterranean exuberance, Mediterranean, all those flowers and peaches and fruit, but also very nice tension and straightness to the wines.
And you use, there is an unusual grape variety that you use in those. Can you tell us about Mauzac?
Yeah, Mauzac is this grape was living in Limoux probably 8 centuries ago. The first trace were there. So today is our indigenous grape, and it's cultivated only in my area. So I feel so much responsible for the future of that grape. That is a little bit disappearing because Chardonnay, Pinot, and Chenin are maybe more sexy and well-known grape all over the world. But I fight very hard to keep my Mauzac alive. It's a beautiful grape, not with a very high acidity level. So what I do is that I harvest very early. Last summer, it was on the 12th of August. And it was 40 degrees, so it was really a challenge. But this grape is really beautiful also because it is unique, and the taste is a walk on the orchard. You have green apple nuts, you have pear nuts, and all these nuts are very different from the classic nut you have. And also this grape is mature 2 weeks after the other. So for us, it's very important to face this change of climate, because when Chardonnay and Pinot arrive in mid-August. The Mosaic is coming early September, when the nights are much more fresh and when it's much easier for us to harvest and to cut it and to have a slow maturity. The maturity are not going too fast. Sorry for my English, huh? Sometimes.
Oh,
midnight.
you're doing great. So the wine that you make for the Angels is different than what your family winery makes at all?
No, not at all. There are two créments, one white crément with Chardonnay, Chenin, and this beautiful Mosaic. And then I have a crément rosé, which is really the wine that made us known everywhere where we are known, of course. And because it's a rosé that is so a sparkling rosé, a crément, and it is done exactly like a white. So I want to keep the elegance of a white, but just to bring some fantasy with a pale pink color and some red fruit notes like the white strawberry. So it's very delicate and fantastic with sushi or shrimp or lobster if you have more money.
That sounds wonderful. So when will we be seeing any of your wines here again? Do you know when they're going to be released?
They're on the boat.
On the boat, yay!
So they're coming soon.
Wonderful. So excited.
They're on the 18 vintage. In France, the minimum legal for the sparkling are 9 months aging on lees. Our minimum legal is 2 years. So this is really the first vintage we can let go out from the cellar, and we go up to 7 years aging on lees. So this is very exciting because I harvest very early to get the freshness and the acidity. Then I keep the wines very, very long aging on lees. So we have a very delicate aromas coming from the second fermentation on lees and very thin bubble, very festive. And that they give you the occasion to celebrate. And this is beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for staying up so late. So now we're going to go to another country outside the US. We're heading down to Chile. And Irene, can you tell us about the wonderful things that you are making down in Chile? And so what's the weather like right now? And what are you currently doing in the vineyard?
The weather now is very summer. We are picking already. We are picking whites at this moment. So far, it's looking nice. We was waiting for early season, but finally it's on time, in the normal time, because the weather changed a little bit and the hot days start declining a bit. So we get some more tranquility for picking the whites. And here is 8:30, so 25 to 9 p.m. In the night. And so very happy to make the wines for the Angels there.
What you do some pretty typical grape varieties that are well known from Chile.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite grape variety to work with?
That's the difficult question, I think, as all they describe the same. You know, you pass with some times, for example, I like rediscover making Chardonnay because you look for the balance between the fruit, between the oak, malolactic, the acid. So looking in the right balance is really something that interests me a lot in the last, I would say, 3-4 years. And in the other hand, making Carmener, that is our, like we call it sometimes our flag, the national flag, because Carmener, always I said, if you can grow Carmener, it means you can grow almost everything, because is very difficult. It's very late in the season. Normally, if you have not a long summer weather, you are in the risk of getting rain, so get some very green characters in Carmenere. So it's important to manage the vineyard. In Carmenere, the vineyard is really, really a key issue to have the right ripeness and the nice characters on the wine. And for me, I really look in all the reds to have very smooth tannins. That's my really main focus. I think to have the complexity, the flavor, but involved in a nice smooth tannin is what I really look for.
What part are all of your vineyards within the Central Valley, or how far do you go north and south within?
Yeah, our Central Valley is very close to the ocean because we are a very skinny and a very narrow country. So normally you are in direct line to the ocean, like any time for 40 to 80 kilometers at the most. And we have the difference to have some of our vineyards in the Piedmont of the Andes, and that gives a very special character. We have our Petit Verdot and the Syrah in the Piedmont of the Andes, and that gives a special identity because you keep a nice acidity, a nice freshness, but at the same time, a full maturity. And that makes the wines very good for aging. And I love that in the Petit Verdot and in the Syrah.
So those are grapes that you don't normally hear growing in Chile. Your history seems to be very much in red wine production.
Yeah, I born in a small city in Maule, and my grandfather has a farm, and he makes wine, in fact. And so we used to go there with our cousins, with our family to spend vacations and summertime. And my father, he's a lawyer. He used to be a lawyer because he passed away. But he really likes farm, and I go many times with him in the horses to see the vineyards. And my grandfather has planted some País, a very old Spanish grape, and a very sweet grape. And at that time, I have totally forbidden to get into the winery because it was in the old system of making wines that you have in the middle big swimming pools of wines. Like you do the pump overs into swimming pools in the middle of the winery, and you come back into the tank. So it was very dangerous for the kids to get into the kind of the swimming pools in the middle. So I can go only until the crushing and to see how the grapes was getting into the winery, but no inside. But still, I remember the smelling of that old winery in wooden tanks. And I didn't know I like that, but I decided from very early times that I want to be involved in the country. So I studied for agronomy, in January agronomy. And at the beginning, I was thinking going for animals, like cows, horses, all that. And inside of university, I discovered the enology. I remember a teacher that was really nice and I was following the two specialties, the animals and enology, for some time until I need to decide for one. And I really fell in love with enology, and I think I have in my mind in some way, and I study for enology. And at that time, here in Chile, at that class, we was 8 students and only one woman. When I decided for enology, it was a really not for women, really, I will say. Yeah.
Oh, good for you. That's so exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, now we're going to stay in the Southern Hemisphere and speak with Nicky. So New Zealand, South Island, Waipara. I'm going to try to say it correctly. I was there a year ago, right before COVID hit, and I'm waiting to go back. I had such a fabulous time. So you guys are you're growers, but you're fairly new to winemaking on the estate?
So my parents, my father's always been from Canterbury. So Canterbury is like sort of in the middle of the South Island of New Zealand. And about 25 years ago, they bought a bare piece of land and planted Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And it wasn't till about 10 years ago that we started making wine off the estate. So before that, we had sold it to other wine companies. And then we decided, oh, you know, it's probably about time we made some for ourselves. And we started with 600 litres. Yeah, so we're not big, but we, yeah, we make a little bit of booze now, which is lovely. Yeah, so.
And you do the traditional the grapes that we see traditionally from New Zealand, you know, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, or anything else that you guys are growing?
So we from our estate, it's just Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which is suited to the cooler climates in the South Island. But we also make and produce from our growers some Pinot Gris and some Sauvignon Blanc as well. So, yeah, so it's it's great. But mostly we're a Chardonnay Pinot Noir producing family, which is
yes,
bread and butter.
So you being in the business, having the family vineyard for a while, you know a little bit about it, but how did you really get into it? Why did you decide to get into it?
So my father's always been in the liquor business. So I grew up in sort of around bond stores and things like that, and probably my brother as well. So it's always been around on our table or sort of just in the background, really. And so it's when Mum and Dad decided to buy some land and plant a vineyard. My brother was also studying his master's at Lincoln University, and then I started at Lincoln. So it's sort of been quite interconnected, really, and it was just naturally a natural place to go for us. Yes, and it seems to have worked out really well, and I've never looked back. So I've been making wine for 20 years now, and harvest has just started in New Zealand. It's a bit cooler this year, so it's taking a little bit longer to get going. But so it's going well though. It's probably a smaller crop than what we would want, but it seems to be the quality will be there this year. So that's the main thing. Yeah.
So when I was in that region, the thing that struck me the most was how hilly it was. And how windy it was.
Oh yes. Yes, well, we've got the Southern Alps, which is so that's sort of the bone down the side of the middle of the South Island, and that creates a lot of these nor'west winds, which are like warm, really quite gusty winds that sort of go through the Canterbury Plains, and are quite a driving force. They drive Mum mad, really. But they're brilliant for washing. It's a brilliant drying day when the nor'west is blowing, and it just creates sort of enables the vines to get a massive amount of warmth and airflow, and it helps against disease protection and helps with our ripening, and just gives us just a wee gust through. Yes,
wee gust. It was more like just it was crazy. So you have in your bio here that you actually worked in other countries. before you kind of settled in back in New Zealand as a winemaker? Can you
Yeah,
tell us
so
where else you were?
So I think for Kiwis, a rite of passage is to travel because we're so far away from the rest of the world. It takes 12 hours to really get anywhere by plane, except for Australia. So when I finished university, I went to Oregon and did a vintage there. I lived in Canada for a year and made wine in the Okanagan, and made ice wine, which was amazing, like most amazing experience. Though it was too cold to go outside. It was like -16 or something. It was not a place for a Kiwi. And then I did a vintage in the Languedoc, so as well in the south of France, where Francoise is from. So and that was an awesome experience as well. And then it was time to come home, and now I work with my father every day, and it's great. Yeah, it's lovely.
Oh, that's awesome. So Christy, do we have some questions from our angels?
We sure do. We also have a lot of comments. Penelope, there were some sad tears that there were none of your wines on the site for anyone. Both for Francoise and Penelope, everyone wants more bubbly, so make as much as you possibly can. That is your directive from all of the angels in the audience. Penelope has one last bottle there. She's keeping it for herself. Anna, they wanted to know if you have any ports in the future or if you're interested in making any ports.
Well, I make a port style wine. You can't say port. It's called Dos Mais Forte, which in Portuguese means sweet and strong. And it's made using traditional port methods and using Portuguese varietals grown in the same vineyard where the Amador County wines come from. And it's the 2019 vintage. It's actually being bottled in a couple of weeks. So I'm thinking it'll be released sometime in the summer. And yeah, it'll be available, hopefully sometime late summer. And it'll be there.
Great. And then Nicky, there actually was a question for you. Who leads the winemaking in your family? Is it your brother, you, or your parents?
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Matt obviously has his own program in the US and other countries. But he also helps. He helps with the Denali. I send all my wines up to him to have a look at, and I really appreciate his input and feedback. But I think Dad and I, we agree to disagree sometimes, but yeah, generally we work really well together. So it's actually quite nice. And so we try not to have too many arguments. Yeah, it's a bit awkward, isn't it? So yeah. But it's a family, it's a collective. Yeah.
I would imagine there would be some natural competition between all of you and the kind of styles that you have, or some friendly time too.
Yeah. Oh, we have a lot of fun too, though. And then and we've got a sister as well, and yeah, so she likes to get involved with. She enjoys the product. Yeah.
The research assistant. That's what I am. Official.
Exactly.
Research.
Yeah. No, she's very good. Yes.
And then Irene, there was a question for you. Just, do you have any more plans to make more Chilean wines for angels? Karen says, we were in Chile last year and would love to have more Chilean wines available.
Yes, always we are trying to look for new things, and we are doing our Carmeneres and looking to have more, because I think that is being very well received. And I enjoy very much, and I really like Carmenere. And we are doing some beautiful Cabernets too. That's why we are expanding the range on our Cabernets. And we try to make some kind of sweets, but that will be very small. I don't know if I will try this harvest. That's kind of a new toy for this season. So we will see what happens finally.
That's really exciting. I know Mauricio Lorca is going to be making a sparkling Malbec for us this year. That's really time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely something coming down for Angel.
Bubbles.
Bubbles, yeah. And then for the group, there was actually a thought. Daniel wanted to know what your thought was on concrete cask versus stainless steel versus oak versus other. I don't know who wants to answer that, or if anyone has a particular opinion about either of those vessels.
I love concrete, and I think every time has his own specialty. I think concrete and oak, you keep the temperature in a very nice way, and the egg tanks, concrete, are beautiful.
Yeah, I use quite a lot of concrete here at Artesa too, and I use it for every varietal under the sun. I'm actually doing some sparkling in concrete this year too. And especially for the whites, I really like it. But my best Cabernet 2 years ago was made in a concrete open top that I really, the intensity was really spectacular. But my preference is fermenting all three, and the blend of the three vessels, concrete, stainless, and oak. It's the most balanced wine, but as a component for winemaking, I think it's really interesting.
Right. That were the top questions that we had from the group. It's so exciting to see all of you in one room together and hear the kind of varied stories that you have. The thing that unites you all here is really your momentum as female winemakers and really having a place in your own region, just leading the track there. So if any of you have any kind of parting words of wisdom for a new winemaker who's on this call, or any kind of advice to give, I would love for you to share that about just what your experience has been and what advice you would share with anyone looking to start out.
I can say just go for it, because I have the experience that when I was starting was not kind of a job for ladies, but I think we prove and we can do it in a very nice, good way. So just go for it. If you want it, just go.
And I agree. And somebody else had mentioned, try a harvest, try it out. If it's something that you're really interested in, there's lots of opportunities to try it, especially if you're young enough and you don't have a lot of other responsibilities. That's the time to really check out not only winemaking, but a lot of different things. But really, that's the way you're going to know. I've had enough interns through the course of my time that the ones that really enjoyed harvest went on, and some of them are very well-known winemakers. And usually the ones that it wasn't for them, too dirty, whatever, usually right after harvest, that was the end of their trek. So I think it's definitely worthwhile. It's a lot easier for women to get in and even do that at this stage. It's not perfect, but definitely easier than it was 35 years ago to get a position like that. So yeah, go for it.
I did see a question. I did see a question on organic and sustainable grape growing. Is anybody particular? Well, Nicky, New Zealand is pretty much going totally organic and is almost all sustainable at this point.
There's a big movement. We have a sustainable wine growers, which I think 99% of wineries and vineyards are members. There's the odd vineyard that's not, but it's all about reducing your inputs, regeneration, diversity into the vineyards, and it's all about, if you've got mealybug problems in your vines, or you've got sorry, excuse me, it's my mother. Sorry. Yeah, so and you know, if you've got like a mealybug problem, and then you're instead of spraying you know, all those harsh chemicals, you know, the introduction of ladybugs or, you know, things like that. So it's not completely like there still are spraying, but it's just trying to be more mindful of, you know, what's going to impact on the next generation of us really, and the consumer, and what's best for the consumer ultimately. But definitely a big movement in New Zealand.
Mhm. Anybody else have any comments on sustainable, organic, or even biodynamic?
Yeah, so we're actually I'm seeing more and more people kind of going in that direction. And right at the moment, I actually have bottled an organic sparkling wine. It's still kind of out for discussion, what we want to do with it, what direction we want to go from there. So far, it's actually coming out quite nice. But it's been interesting for a lot of my team to be working with wines that you're not adding SO2 to, and you know, you're really not adding anything to except some organic yeast, unless you have a good culture around the winery. So been a really great experience so far, and I'm hoping that it may encourage other people to actually go the full organic route versus just the made with organic grape route, which is a little bit different.
Certainly here in Lodi, we have the Lodi Rules program, which was started over 20 years ago, which was one of the first programs for sustainable wine grape growing. And it was started with growers that came together who recognized that this is really what we need to do for the future. You know, it's definitely a mindset, and it's what we need to do to, you know, take care of our land. And so the grapes that I make the wines from are farmed by a farming family that is known in the area for sustainable farming. So they are sustainably farmed grapes. And it's just a mindset we have here where we make the wines as well. Is just kind of, as Nicky said, it's just looking at the impacts you make. How can you look around you and do things in such a way that is good for the environment, good for the people, good for the future. So certainly that's something that is here in Lodi, and here where I make the wines, is something that's just kind of part of who we are and what we do.
And I would say at this point, most of the vineyards, I'm not seeing a lot of vineyards that aren't at least sustainable. So that's really encouraging as well.
Very true.
I just want to add, like in
Absolutely.
Napa Valley, we have a pilot program. Not only it's called Napa Green, and the certification happens. It's done by the Napa Valley vintners, but it's done in the vineyard. But also, you can certify the winery, and so by reducing the use of plastics, of like having a proper use of electricity, of energy, of water. And it's really interesting because you could be both vineyard certified and have the production facility, the winery certified, and we're certified in both. It's quite a lot of work, but as Penny and Karen, Nicky so well said, it's really working for next generations and being less intrusive in the environment. I think it's a trend it's here to stay, gladly, not going anywhere.
Well, thank you all for all your work and leading the way in the vineyard and in your own personal careers. You have a lot of love going in the chat. People just are very inspired to hear your stories, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Francoise, thank you for taking time out of your midnight. Is it 1 a.m. now? She needs to go to bed. Sally, thank you so much. I forgot to mention that Sally is actually an angel. She's been an angel with us for a very long time. So when I reached out to her to help with this event, I very much fangirled out and was so thrilled to hear that she loves all of what we're doing here. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, you ladies, have a great weekend. Thank you all for attending. Cheers.
you so much.
Merci.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Au
Thank
revoir.
you.
Au revoir. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao. Ciao.